I returned home for the Christmas service and leaned over to whisper to my daughter, "Do you think Grandma will like the scarf I sent last month?" She paused, her eyes flicking toward the front pew where my parents sat, all smiles and civility. Then, just under her breath, she replied, "You're not part of their plan." I hugged her. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't look around to see if anyone overheard. I just pulled her closer and held her for a second longer than usual. The organ started. Everyone rose. My parents didn't turn around. 3 hours later, we were in the fellowship hall, plastic chairs and lukewarm cider, red and green tablecloths that smelled faintly of bleach. My sister Tara was handing out cookies to the children, wearing a Christmas pin shaped like a dove. My dad laughed too loud at something Pastor Nick said. My mom clutched her pearls and leaned in like a woman rehearsing grace. I kept to the corner, sipping cider that tasted like regret and artificial cinnamon. "Tell me again," I said softly to my daughter as she tore open a packet of sugar for her tea. "What you meant." She looked at me with that quiet, heavy sadness children shouldn't have to carry. Aunt Tara was talking to Grandma last week. She thought I was asleep. She folded the empty packet carefully. "She said you wouldn't be coming back, that this was the last year they'd have to deal with the overlap." "Ardzo." "The overlap," I repeated. She nodded. "She meant you. You and me." I didn't flinch. I just looked down at my cup and let the steam blur my vision for a moment. Later that evening, when the guests had left and the dishes had been washed and re-washed, I sat alone in the guest room. Not my old room that had been turned into storage years ago, a polite word for erasure. This room smelled like lavender and mothballs. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how long they had been planning my fade out. Maybe it started the year I stopped sending money every month. Or maybe it began earlier the first time I said no. No, I couldn't co-sign Tara's second refinance. No, I wouldn't take a week off work to help Mom with her procedure that turned out to be a facial peel. The next morning, I opened my laptop and logged into the old joint account, the one I used to transfer grocery money when Dad's pension ran late, or pay off that surprise hospital bill when Tara's youngest broke his arm. The account had a new name. Family Care Trust, TM only. My initials were gone. The access level showed view only. I scrolled through the transactions. Weekly transfers to my parents. Automatic bill pay for Tara's HOA dues. A monthly health insurance premium one I used to cover, except this time it listed Tara's address and her husband's name as the primary. My name didn't appear at all. I searched deeper, clicked through old statements, archived folders, then I found it. A health insurance document dated 6 weeks ago. It listed the active dependents on the policy. My name was not among them, but my daughter's was. As a dependent of Tara, I blinked. Once, twice. The air thinned. They had reassigned her. On paper, in coverage, in narrative, I'd been replaced. Not with malice, but with convenience. The way you erase a whiteboard before a new lesson? I texted my daughter. "Are you still listed under my insurance, honey?" It took her a few minutes. Then, "I don't know. Aunt Tara handled everything. Grandma said they were streamlining things while you were away." Streamlining. I sat back, phone in hand, pulse steady like a clock counting down. I didn't scream. I didn't even curse. I just opened a new document and started typing dates, changes, policies, access logs. A timeline. Not for them, for me. I walked downstairs for dinner. The table was set, the ham overcooked, the cranberry sauce still jiggling in its can-shaped mold. My dad carved like he was auditioning for tradition. My mom passed rolls like forgiveness. Tara poured wine and laughed at something no one said. I didn't speak. My daughter sat beside me, tense, her fork scraping silently. Halfway through the meal, Tara said, "We were thinking of reorganizing the family fund in the new year. Maybe put someone more stable in charge." My mother nodded. "It's about sustainability," my dad added. "You've got your own life now." I looked up finally, met each of their eyes in turn. Then I smiled, not warmly, not cruelly, just enough to end the conversation. I turned to my daughter. "Would you like to leave early?" She nodded. We stood. No one stopped us, not even out of habit. Outside, the air was cold but clean. As we walked to the car, she slipped her hand into mine. "I didn't want to ruin your Christmas," she whispered. "You didn't," I said. "You gave me clarity." I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was angry, not even because I was shocked. I lay awake staring at the ceiling of that lavender-scented room, trying to trace the exact moment I stopped being a daughter and started being a placeholder. Maybe it was when I first started sending money home after my divorce. $300 here, $500 there, always quiet, always through Dad's account. Back then, it felt like love, like duty, like something I was proud to do. I had a child of my own, yes, but I believed in family as a net, not a chain. I thought support meant showing up, even when they didn't ask. Especially when they didn't ask. The first big payment came when Tara lost her job. Just until we're back on our feet, she said. I covered her rent for 6 months. When Mom's car broke down, I paid the repairs. When Dad's blood pressure medication changed and insurance didn't cover the new dosage, I footed the bill. No one ever said thank you, not directly, but there were holiday cards, a few phone calls, and the occasional forwarded meme from Tara. I took those as signs of connection. Looking back now, I realized they were just receipts. Every birthday, I sent gift cards. Every December, I wired Christmas money for the family, and Mom would text back a heart emoji. The last time they visited me was 4 years ago. It was a long weekend. My daughter was in 8th grade. I cleaned the apartment, cooked from scratch, tried to make it feel like home. My mother complained about the couch. My father asked if I'd considered downsizing. Tara didn't come. She said it was too far for just 3 days. Still, I kept trying. After I moved for work, the support became more formal. I set up automatic transfers, $600 a month to Dad's account. It was meant for groceries, gas, household repairs. When Tara had her second baby, I bumped it to $800. I didn't ask where it went. I told myself it wasn't my place. I told myself it was kindness. But kindness without clarity is just fuel for entitlement. One spring, my daughter got accepted to a summer science program in DC. She was over the moon. I cried when we opened the letter. I called Mom to share the news. "That's nice," she said. "But did you hear Tara's husband got promoted?" That same week, I asked if the family fund could help cover airfare. Mom hesitated. "Sweetheart, we're trying to be fair. It wouldn't be right if some kids got more than others." I didn't argue. I bought the ticket myself. Then came the accident. I was in a minor car crash on the way home from work. Nothing broken, but enough to rack up a hospital bill and force me to take unpaid leave for a month. I asked Dad if the family fund could cover my rent for just one cycle. Just once. The next day, he sent a message. We talked it over. It wouldn't be appropriate. I never asked again. But I didn't stop sending money either. Somewhere deep inside, I still believed in the long game. I thought one day, when the dust settled and the kids were grown, when the family finally slowed down and had time to look back, they'd remember not just the money, the steadiness, the showing up, the sacrifices that didn't come with fanfare, the quiet math of loyalty. My daughter once asked me years ago, "Do they help you the way you help them?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was too simple and too true. "That's not how it works," I said. But maybe it should have been. Last winter, I took a week off and flew back for Dad's birthday. It was supposed to be a surprise. I got there the night before, booked a room, brought a bottle of the wine he used to love. When I arrived at the restaurant the next evening, the table was already full. Tara, her husband, their kids, my parents. There was a cake, there were gifts, there was no empty chair. I stood there, holding the bottle in both hands like it was some kind of shield. My mother's face went blank when she saw me. "Oh," she said, "you're here." Tara gave me a tight smile. "We thought you said you couldn't make it." I hadn't. I'd never said that. I sat at the far end of the table, barely spoke, left before dessert. I gave the wine to the waitress. That was 10 months ago. Since then, I've watched the shift happen slowly. Fewer calls, fewer texts, no more small updates from Mom about her garden, no more photos of the kids. It was like being faded out of a family photo, not all at once, but pixel by pixel. Until that night at the church gathering, I hadn't realized how complete the erasure had become. But now I knew. And more importantly, so did my daughter. The real discovery came the week after Christmas. I was back home, back in my apartment with the too thin walls and the view of the loading dock, unpacking slowly between shifts. My daughter had returned to campus early for winter labs, and I was sorting receipts when I realized I still hadn't checked on the insurance. Not mine, hers. A small voice in my head kept repeating that moment in the fellowship hall. Her whisper, the look in her eyes. "You're not part of their plan." I logged into the health insurance portal, the same one I'd been using for nearly a decade, the one where I was listed as primary and she as dependent. But when the dashboard loaded, something felt off. My name was no longer there, just hers. And under the guardian field, it didn't say mother. It said Aunt, Tara. At first, I thought it was a glitch, some clerical error. I clicked to see the change history. 6 weeks ago, the profile had been updated. The primary policyholder was listed as Tara McAllister. The mailing address had changed to one I didn't recognize, a P.O. box in a neighboring county. I stared at the screen, trying to understand what I was seeing. My daughter's coverage had been transferred, without my consent, without my knowledge. I had paid every monthly premium out of my own account, and yet, somehow, I was no longer in the system. I scrolled further. The new emergency contact? Tara? Secondary? Her husband. My name didn't appear once. I called the insurer, 30 minutes on hold. When the representative finally answered, I asked her to verify the change. Yes, she said, that update was submitted by the authorized policyholder in late November. And who is that? I asked, though I already knew. Tara McAllister, she replied. She provided legal documentation. I felt something sharp twist behind my ribs. What documentation? A notarized letter, she said, naming her as the legal guardian for medical and financial purposes. The room went silent around me. I asked her to send me a copy. She hesitated. I'll need to check with our legal department. I hung up before she could finish the sentence. My hands were shaking. My face felt hot, but my voice, when I called my daughter, was steady. Sweetheart, I said, can you check something for me? She was in her dorm. I could hear the hum of the heater. Sure, she said. What's up? When you had your flu shot last month, where did they send the confirmation? A pause. To Aunt Tara's email, I think. She said the portal was being weird. Grandma set it up for her. I thought you told them to manage it while you were working overtime. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just said, I need to call you back, and hung up before my voice broke. I opened my inbox, scrolled through months of ignored emails, holiday coupons, account summaries. Nothing from the insurer, nothing flagged, nothing asked. I searched my own documents folder, pulled up the last policy update I had signed. It was dated nearly a year ago. After that, radio silence. Somewhere in that gap, they had made a choice. Not to ask, not to involve, just to remove. I called my bank next. The automatic payments had still been going out to the same account number, but when I checked the name on the receiving end, it had changed. It no longer said Health Benefit Services. It said McAllister Household Fund. They'd redirected the funds, quietly, cleanly, the same way you reroute a package. The last thing I checked was the family trust document, the one I drafted years ago, before things got complicated, back when I still believed a central pool for emergencies would be a good idea. I wasn't on it anymore. The document had been amended. The signature wasn't mine. I sat in that apartment until the sun went down. No tears, just stillness. I thought about every late-night shift I'd taken to cover those premiums. Every time I'd turned down a trip, or a new coat, or a full meal, because I was helping the family, I thought about my daughter, alone in her dorm, thinking I'd handed her off like an inconvenience. Then I opened a new document, titled it Reclamation. I wrote down every date, every transaction, every policy change, every falsified signature I could prove. I made a list of people to call, a lawyer, the insurance board, the financial oversight office. Then I added one more name, Ethan, a friend from my first hospital job, now working in fraud compliance. At 10:42 p.m., I sent the file to my personal email with the subject line, just in case. I didn't sleep that night either, but for the first time in years, I wasn't tired. I was awake. Fully. Finally. I called Ethan the next morning. He picked up on the second ring. You sound like someone who just read something she shouldn't have, he said. I didn't even try to explain it all on the phone. 30 minutes later, we were sitting across from each other in a coffee shop near his office, 2 lattes between us, my laptop open, and a USB drive on the table like a loaded gun. He scrolled in silence, occasionally raising his eyebrows, once muttering, Jesus. When he reached the insurance portal screenshots, he leaned back. They filed guardianship paperwork, not full custody, but close enough to reassign medical and financial authority. Without my consent, I said, while I was still paying for it. That's not just immoral, he said. That might be criminal. I didn't flinch. I didn't feel much of anything at that point. The numbness had calcified into something sharper. I don't want to destroy them, I said, but I'm done protecting them. He nodded. You want distance. Legally enforced distance. Exactly. Over the next 4 days, Ethan helped me file a formal complaint with the insurance board, initiate a fraud report through my bank, and begin the process of severing my financial connections to the McAllister household. It was surprisingly easy once I stopped worrying about being perceived as harsh. I closed the auto payments, froze the old shared account, notified the insurer that any documents bearing my signature after July were fraudulent, requested a full audit. Then I sent one final email to my family, brief, factual, without flourish. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing all financial and legal involvement from the McAllister household. Do not use my name, my information, or my funds for any purpose. Any attempt to do so will be treated as identity theft and reported accordingly. I have retained counsel. Further contact should go through him. I signed it with my full legal name. No love, no take care. Just the truth, delivered like a closing door. It took less than 6 hours for the first call to come. Tara, of course. I didn't pick up. Then Mom, then Dad. All missed. I watched the screen light up and fade like a storm trying to reach land. That night, I turned off my phone for the first time in months. I lit a candle, not for grief, just for stillness. By the next morning, the emails started. The first from my mother. Subject, let's not escalate. The body read like a Hallmark card dipped in vinegar. We're sorry you feel this way. No one intended to hurt you. You've always been so independent, we assumed you didn't want to be involved anymore. She ended with a single line. Family means compromise. I didn't reply. Then came Tara's email. Short, defensive, arrogant. I was trying to help. You're always gone. You said yourself you couldn't be everywhere at once. Don't make this into a war. I didn't reply to that one either. Instead, I printed both and added them to the folder labeled documentation. But the real blow came from my daughter. She called 2 days later, her voice quiet. Aunt Tara said you're mad because she helped me with the insurance. She said you gave her permission months ago. I closed my eyes. Did I? I asked. She hesitated. I don't know. She said maybe you forgot. And what do you believe? I asked. Another pause. I don't know what to believe. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. You don't need to choose sides, I told her. Just don't assume silence means agreement. Okay, she whispered. Are you safe? I asked. Do you need anything? Number, I'm okay. Then study hard, I said. I'll handle the rest. I hung up and felt something crack, not a break, but a release. I had spent years carrying this family like a fragile sculpture, afraid that if I let go, it would shatter, and I'd be blamed for the mess. But they weren't fragile. They were calculated. And I wasn't the glue, I was the scaffolding, disposable once the facade was complete. The following week, I received a letter from the insurance company confirming the fraud investigation had been opened. Another came from the bank, noting the recovery of misdirected payments. Then, finally, a certified envelope from my parents' attorney. Inside, a cease and desist request, claiming I was slandering the family and disrupting internal arrangements. I laughed. Actually laughed. For a moment, it almost felt like theater. They were scared. Not of legal consequences, but of exposure. Of losing the narrative they'd curated that I was distant, unreliable, cold. And here I was, present, meticulous, legally armed. I called Ethan. Do I need to reply? No, he said, let them throw paper. We'll keep collecting proof. That Sunday, I skipped church. Instead, I drove to the beach, sat on a bench overlooking the gray winter ocean, and let the cold air scrape the inside of my lungs. No guilt, no panic, just space, just me. They wanted me silent. They wanted me invisible. And for too long I played along. But now, I was something else. Not vindictive, not cruel, just no longer available. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It started slow, quiet, like a car running out of fuel on an empty road. First came the overdraft notices. Not mine, theirs. I knew because Mom accidentally forwarded an automated alert to the family email thread she forgot I was still copied on. The subject line read, Urgent, payment rejected. Then came the pharmacy call. My old number was still listed as the emergency contact for Dad's refills. Hi, this is Laura from Philwell Pharmacy, just letting you know that Mr. McAllister's prescription for lisinopril hasn't been picked up and the copay was declined. Should we try a different card? I thanked her, said I'd pass the message along, and hung up. By Tuesday, my voicemail was full. Tara left the first message, clipped and breathless. Hey, I didn't think you'd actually go through with everything. Can we talk? I didn't respond. The next one was Mom. Her voice was small, high-pitched, almost childlike. We're all so confused, sweetheart. This doesn't feel like you. Can you just come over? No drama, just talk. But it was Dad's message that hit different. It came at 2:37 a.m. You think you're better than us? You think you can just pull the plug on everything and walk away? You're punishing us. For what? For trying to make things easier? I played that one twice. Not because I needed to hear it again, but because I wanted to remember the exact moment the mask slipped. The next day, I received a group text from an unknown number. It had no greeting, no signature, just a sentence. If you had any heart left, you'd fix this before it gets worse. I didn't need to ask who sent it. The language was familiar. It was the same tone they'd used for years, dressed up as obligation, dipped in guilt. They weren't asking for help. They were demanding the restoration of a system they thought they were entitled to. And now that it had collapsed, they were panicking, not because I was gone, but because the structure I'd maintained without complaint had gone with me. They began calling my daughter. She told me 2 days later, her voice hesitant. Grandma keeps asking if you're okay, if you're seeing anyone, like a therapist, or a lawyer. I almost laughed. Both, I said. She didn't respond. You don't have to defend me, I added. I'm not ashamed of protecting myself. I know, she said quietly, but they're acting like you're unstable. I've been called worse, I said, and I had, just not by the people who were supposed to love me. By the end of the week, things escalated. Tara texted that she needed access to the old fund, just temporarily, because Mom's credit card was maxed out and they couldn't cover the water bill. We'll sort it out later, she wrote, just this once. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent her a screenshot of the account closed. 0 balance, all permissions revoked. Beneath it, I typed one line. There is no just this once. That Saturday, a letter arrived at my apartment. Handwritten, no return address. I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. Tight loops, overcurled Ys, the kind of script that tried too hard to be elegant. Inside, 3 pages. The first was a history lesson. Everything she and Dad had sacrificed to raise me, to keep the family together. The second was a lecture on forgiveness, a veiled sermon about how holding on to resentment only breeds loneliness. The third was what they really meant to say, we need you. 3 words underlined twice. No apology, no ownership, just a plea cloaked in righteousness. I folded the pages carefully and slid them back into the envelope. I didn't throw it away. I just placed it in the drawer with the rest proof of the performance. The next day, I got a call from Pastor Nick. I let it go to voicemail. Hey, just checking in. Your mom mentioned you were going through a rough time. Wanted to let you know the congregation's praying for you. We'd love to see you back. I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I blocked the number. What they didn't understand, or maybe refused to understand, was that this wasn't punishment. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was clarity. After years of subsidizing their dysfunction, of paying the toll to be tolerated, I had finally chosen silence over performance, distance over distortion. They were unraveling not because I'd done something wrong, but because I'd stopped pretending. The family system had always relied on me being available, being the good daughter, the dependable one, the invisible wallet behind the curtain. But now, the curtain had dropped. The show was over, and they didn't know who to be without an audience. The confrontation happened in the place it always does, in someone else's idea of neutral ground. Not my home, not theirs. A cousin's baby shower, hosted in the rented basement of a community center, with folding chairs and plastic tablecloths that stuck to your skin. I wasn't planning to go. I had RSVP'd, maybe, which in family terms meant probably not. But my daughter was already in town for spring break, and she wanted to show her face. Just for an hour, she said. No pressure. I agreed, knowing full well the hour would stretch. We arrived just after 2. Music was playing. Finger sandwiches sat sweating under plastic wrap. My cousin, wide-eyed and glowing, greeted us with genuine warmth. She didn't know she was a buffer. We made small talk, drifted toward the snack table. I poured a cup of punch and took one sip before I saw them, my parents, standing near the far wall, flanked by Tara and her husband. They hadn't aged much in the last few months, but something had shifted. My father's posture had stiffened, like he was bracing for impact. My mother's smile was too wide, too polished. Tara didn't even fake a smile. They walked over together, as if choreographed. "Can we talk?" my mother asked, already stepping aside to make space. I glanced at my daughter. She nodded once. "I'll be over there," she whispered. I followed them to a corner behind the drink station, far enough for privacy but not confrontation. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and waited. "You've made your point," Dad started. No greeting, no preamble. "We're in a mess." "I know," I said. "And you're enjoying that, aren't you?" Tara snapped, watching us scramble. I shook my head slowly. "I'm not watching anything. I stopped watching when you started writing me out of my own life." Mom stepped forward. "We never meant for things to get this far, but you," she stopped, corrected herself. "You blindsided us. We thought you understood what family means." "Family," I said, "doesn't file guardianship papers behind someone's back. Family doesn't reroute payments meant for a child's education. Family doesn't call it help when it's theft with extra steps." Dad's jaw tightened. "We were trying to keep things functional." "No," I said. "You were trying to keep things comfortable. For yourselves. What did you expect?" Tara hissed. "You were always gone, always busy. You let the space grow." "So you filled it," I said, "with control, with access, with lies." My mother raised a hand, her voice trembling. "This is tearing us apart." I let the silence stretch. "You tore this apart the day you decided I was expendable, the day you chose convenience over honesty. You erased me from the paperwork like I was a clerical error, and now you're upset the machine stopped working." "Oh," Tara crossed her arms. "You're bitter. You're doing all of this because you want some kind of gold star for being the good one." I smiled, cold and flat. "I did it all quietly for years. If I wanted applause, I'd have handed you a receipt with every check. Number, I'm not bitter. I'm just done." Dad's voice dropped to a growl. "You think you're better than us." "No," I said. "I think I've finally learned not to let guilt disguise itself as loyalty." Mom tried one more time. "Can't we just start over?" "Start over?" I echoed. "How do you suggest we do that? Do you have a spare identity I can borrow? One that hasn't been overwritten in a family spreadsheet?" They said nothing. Behind them, I could see my daughter across the room, laughing softly with my cousin, her shoulders relaxed, her face lit with a kind of peace I hadn't seen in years. I took one step forward. "This conversation is over," I said. "I'm not here to repair what I didn't break." "Oh," Tara rolled her eyes. "You're just mad you're not the center anymore." "I was never the center," I replied. "Just the scaffolding. You never noticed until I stepped away and the roof started to sag." I walked past them, didn't look back. My daughter saw me coming and immediately stood. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Better than expected," I said. "Worse than hoped." We left 10 minutes later. No one followed. No texts, no calls. Just silence, thick and honest. In the car, she reached over and touched my hand gently. "I'm proud of you," she said, and that was the only thing I needed to hear. It started with a voicemail from the bank. Not my bank, theirs. A woman named Cheryl, polite but clearly uncomfortable, left a message saying she needed to speak with Miss McAllister regarding recent activity on a joint family account. "We've noticed several inconsistencies," she said. "If this isn't the best number to reach you, please update your contact information as soon as possible." I didn't call back. I wasn't Miss McAllister anymore, not in name, not in obligation. Then came the email from the utility company. My name was still listed as a backup contact for Tara's address, something I'd agreed to years ago and then forgotten. The subject line read, "Final notice before disconnection." The balance wasn't huge, but it was overdue. I stared at the email for a long time, not because I was tempted to pay it, but because I remembered the day I'd added my name to that account. It was a rainy Tuesday. Tara had called in tears. Her kids were sick, her husband had just lost a contract, and they couldn't make rent. "Just for a month," she'd said. "You're the only one who gets it." I hadn't hesitated. I'd logged in that same night, filled out the form, told myself it was just paper, just insurance. Now that paper was turning into a lifeline they could no longer access. Word traveled fast through the extended family. Cousin Janet messaged me, saying Mom had mentioned financial issues at Sunday lunch. Uncle Peter posted a vague Facebook status about betrayal and consequences. I didn't respond. I watched from a distance as the old machine sputtered and seized. My father's car was repossessed. Tara put her house on the market. Downsizing, she called it in the listing. My parents quietly moved in with her. My daughter saw the U-Haul from her dorm window. They're in the neighborhood, she said. Want me to drop by? No, I told her. Let them settle where they belong. It's strange, she added. Seeing them without the veneer. That's what happens, I said, when the music stops and the lights come up. A month later, I got another envelope. This one came certified. It was a notice of withdrawal from the family trust, an entity I had once created to manage emergencies. Dad had finally signed off, releasing my name from all legal ties. No note, no apology. Just a checkbox next to the phrase, voluntary separation of interest. I signed it without hesitation, mailed it back the same day. Then I changed my last name. The paperwork took a few weeks. It wasn't a full legal change. I kept my surname for continuity, but I dropped McAllister from all joint assets, titles, and affiliations. When the notary asked why, I simply said, it no longer reflects who I am. Meanwhile, their world shrank. Tara's kids were pulled from private school. My mother started selling her jewelry online. The church began taking up quiet collections for a struggling family in transition. People guessed, but no one asked. And that, perhaps, was the worst part for them, not the loss of money, but the loss of image. They could survive without me, but they couldn't survive without the illusion that they had never needed me. I started hearing from people I hadn't spoken to in years. An old neighbor sent a message. Just wanted to say I see you. You did more than anyone ever gave you credit for. A former teacher commented on one of my photos. Your peace looks earned. I let those words wash over me, not as validation, but as recognition. I didn't need praise. I just needed to know I hadn't imagined the weight I carried. One afternoon, I received a message from Tara's oldest. He'd never really spoken to me beyond small talk. This time, it was different. I just want you to know, I get it now. I didn't before, but I do. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. Some things deserved to linger. By spring, the story had shifted. I wasn't the villain anymore, not publicly. I was the daughter who had needed space, the sister who had moved on. Revisionist history. But I let them have it. Let them rewrite the story in a way they could live with. Because I didn't need them to admit the truth. I just needed them to live in it. And they were. Quietly, awkwardly, uncomfortably. Living in a world without the safety net they'd mistaken for a floor. Without the person they once called selfish for setting boundaries. Without the scaffolding they never noticed until it was gone. I made coffee slowly. For the first time in years, I didn't check my bank app while it brewed. The sun filtered in through the cheap curtains I still hadn't replaced, casting long slats of light across the counter. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was spacious. On the fridge, a magnet held up my daughter's latest postcard from campus, handwritten, a small doodle of a coffee mug in the corner. Midterms are brutal, she wrote. But I'm okay. You made me okay. I didn't cry. I just smiled. She was the one thing they hadn't managed to take from me, and somehow I'd helped her survive the same house that had tried to erase me. The apartment was still small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a sink that sometimes hiccuped when the faucet turned too fast. But it was mine. Every piece of furniture had been chosen. Every dish, every blanket, every soft light bulb. Nothing gifted, nothing inherited. I'd replaced the sheets last week. Forest green, no permission needed. There was an envelope on the table when I came back from the mailbox. Thick cardstock, no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's. Inside, a wedding invitation. Tara's eldest. I opened it carefully. No note, no apology. Just my name, printed on the envelope with clinical precision. The kind of invitation sent out of obligation. A performance for others. No one expected me to come. I placed it gently on the windowsill, next to the potted basil plant my daughter had brought over last month. I didn't throw it away. I let it sit there, under the morning light, its silence louder than anything they could have said. I spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning, not because the apartment was dirty, but because the act of putting things back in their place had become a ritual, a small, private restoration. I vacuumed the corners. I organized the drawer of mismatched chargers. I folded laundry and paired every sock. Then I lit a candle. Not for grief, not for them, just for stillness. I had learned, in the months since everything broke open, that endings are rarely loud. They don't come with fireworks or slammed doors. Sometimes they arrive in the form of an empty inbox. A quiet dinner, the moment you realize you no longer feel the urge to explain. They'd stopped reaching out a while ago. No more long messages about forgiveness or unity. No veiled threats. No moral high ground. Just quiet. They'd adjusted, as people do. Found new people to lean on. Or perhaps just found no one. Either way, it wasn't my weight to carry anymore. The final paperwork came in on a Thursday. Certified mail again, this time from the accountant I'd once hired for the family trust. He enclosed a short letter confirming the closure of all joint assets and financial ties. A single line at the end. You are now free of obligation. I stared at those words longer than I meant to, not because they shocked me, but because they named what I had never allowed myself to want. Freedom. Not in the dramatic sense, not a declaration shouted into the void. Just the simple, profound relief of no longer being entangled in someone else's expectations. I put the letter away and walked outside. It was still light, that golden hour where everything looks a little softer, a little more forgiving. I took the long route through the neighborhood, past the school my daughter once attended, past the diner where I used to pick up dinner after double shifts. I passed people I didn't know, faces that didn't recognize me, and felt no need to explain who I was or what had happened. I was just a woman taking a walk, no history pinned to her back. When I got home, I stood for a moment at the threshold, keys in hand, the basil plant leaning gently toward the fading light, the unopened invitation still on the windowsill, and I thought, not with bitterness, but with clarity, they thought I was lost, but I was never theirs to lose. I made dinner slowly that night, roasted vegetables, warm rice, a little wine. I didn't rush through it. I didn't check my phone between steps. I played music, quiet jazz, something without lyrics. I set the table for one, not out of loneliness, but because I wanted to honor the peace I had fought so long to reach. Afterward, I sat by the window with a book I wasn't in a hurry to finish. I watched as the sky shifted from gold to deep blue, the kind of blue that asks nothing of you. Then I reached for the wedding invitation. I turned it over once in my hand, ran my finger along the edge, and finally, quietly, dropped it into the recycling bin. I didn't do it out of spite. I wasn't making a statement. I just knew I wouldn't be going. That part of the story had ended. Not with a fight, not with a scream, but with a door gently closing behind me. I lit another candle, this one lavender. I didn't watch it burn. I just let it be. They will tell their version, I'm sure. That I changed, that I shut them out, that I let the past fester, but the truth is quieter. I didn't walk away to punish them. I walked away to find peace, and I stayed there.